Welcome back, everyone. Well, sorry for how the videos have kind of spaced out lately. I will be continuing to make them, and I'll do them as fast as I can, but I've got a whole bunch of stuff inside the bus that I need to get rid of, and I can only fit so much in the trash bin at one time. So I think it's going to take like 3 weeks to get all that stuff out of there that I pulled out. So I'll keep working on that, but in the meantime, I'm going to do some mini videos on the outside, and we'll see how this goes. So this bus, right behind the rear driver's side tires, has the 2 condensers for the air conditioning system. So this one had 3 ceiling mounted AC units to control the primary interior temperature. And out here is where the other half of that system is. Now, I pulled all of those down, so I don't need this anymore. In fact, right above this spot, so this is right behind the rear fender, obviously, this is where my toilet's going to go. I'm planning on using an incinerating toilet, and I want to use a propane incinerating toilet. So I need a place on the outside of the bus to put a couple propane tanks. I want to use the 20-pound tanks, the standard grill type tanks. That gives me the ability to do propane exchanges or refills pretty easily, pretty much no matter where I might be. I figure that should allow me to actually make use of it instead of having a hard mounted tank that I have to try to find a place to refill. Sorry about the wind noise, by the way. I'll see if I can tone that down a little bit in some of the videos to come. So what we have here, I need to pull these 2 condensers out of here. Now I'll take the trim off the front and the grills, and then up underneath you've got bolts holding these onto the frame. So I think if I can get up there and get those cleaned off, I might be able to just pop those upper bolts off and just take the whole thing down, which should open up a space on the side of the bus here. So up in this space then, I'm going to build a mount for my propane cylinders. What I bought was this. This is a dual propane mount from Flame King. So if you look on Schoolie.com, they do have some frames designed specifically for this. That's part of the reason I went ahead and bought it, figuring I might grab those since I have to place an order from them anyway. But I can easily make my own mounts, that's not a big deal. So, the plan is, I'm going to see what I can do with this. This obviously is your threaded rod, goes right here in the middle. Not going to put it in all the way, but there we go. And this one goes teeth down. This is what holds your propane cylinders in place, right there. And then this is your wing nut to go on top of it and hold it down. And if I wanted to, I can put a cable through that, just put a hole in there, put a cable through it just to try to keep people from stealing it, or run a cable through the propane cylinders. I can also put a fold down door on the outside here to cover up the space. So that part will come later, but for now, I want to get these out of here. Alright, up behind here, here's our plumbing. So we got a line here, we got another one right up there, and then on the other side we got lines as well. So I'll need to pop those loose as well as the wiring harnesses. Got all the fans back here, they won't need to stay. So I'm going to put some penetrating oil on these bolts. My favorite is Deep Creep. See if I can show you that. That one. I find that it works a little better than some of the others, although if you have one that you like, go for it. There we go. We'll let that soak in, get the other side, and then I can start working on this back section. Well, I tried using a wrench, a socket. I could probably get up there with an impact to make it work, but I can't seem to find mine for some reason. Anyway, anything that's underneath this bus is probably going to be rusty, and these bolts are no exception. So I'm going to try to cut them loose. I'm going to use a cutoff wheel on the grinder, and we'll see what we can get. Obviously, you need to watch out for structures underneath. Here's my cutoff wheel. This is what we'll be using. But remember, right underneath here, at least on this bus, what you can see up inside there, right next to the exhaust pipe, that's the fuel tank. So I want to make sure that I'm not throwing any sparks that direction. Obviously it is well enclosed and it is diesel fuel, but I'd rather not get myself in any particular trouble under here. So this side, let me get under here. This side should be pretty easy to cut loose. There you can see the bolts, they do go up through the floor. So I should be able to pop those loose no problem. On the other side though, they're bolted to this flange that you see up here. So they're going to be a little bit harder to cut off, but I should be able to get up in there and do it. And I might be able to just cut the bracketry off of the upper device. I've decided I'm just going to take these down as a unit. There's no reason to separate them. I was able to get some of the plumbing off of here. However, we do have a few that are pretty rusted in place, like that bottom one there. And the two on the other side, I got one loose, and then the other one is not. Here in the middle, the top one is loose. So we're kind of halfway there. I'm just going to cut the hoses off for the rest of it, because again, I don't need any of this stuff. I'll be pulling all that plumbing out of here too. So just keep in mind when you're working on these, what do you need to save and what can you get rid of without any major problems. So let me get rid of these and we'll see what we can do. There we go. All 4 bolts and all the plumbing in the back should be cut. Everything should be loose. So I'm going to lower this jack down and see if the thing actually drops out. I can always hit it with a hammer and use a pry bar, see if I can loosen it up if necessary. All right. Looks like when they installed this, they added this little extra piece of sheeting down here to even out the corner. But I think these 2 rivets right here must go into the unit itself. So I'm going to go ahead and see what I can do about getting those off of there. Yep, they had these riveted right into the middle of it. So with these loose, I should be able to lower it down. rather heavy. Glad I put the jack underneath it. Now look at all that real estate. This is considerably larger than it needs to be. So, a few things I need to take out of here. Up here is one of the plumbing lines. And up here are the others. I just cut everything off with the cutoff wheel. So, right here in the middle somewhere is where I'm going to put the propane cylinders. I might try to put them closer to one side than the other. And I'd like to get them a little bit further away from that mud flap, just in case I blow a tire or something and it doesn't throw chunks at it. But I do also want to put some armor along the front side of the propane cylinders. So let's get one down here and get an idea of how much space I need. Okay, so what I need to figure out next is how much vertical height do I need with this cylinder in place. So what I did, I put the threaded rod into a plate. Then up here I've got this nut set as high as it possibly goes, which is a little bit higher than the tank. I also need to pay attention to the fact that the tank has a flange that sits down inside of this tray. So I need to be able to lift that out of there and not contact the upper section here. So let's take a measurement from this. That'll give me a starting point. Going to ground, we have right about 19 inches. Now, take that off, set this up here, and we'll take another measurement. In fact, I kind of like the idea of leaving that angled like that. Can you see it? Yeah, you can sort of see it. So in this form, we have about 19 and a half. So, how much height do I have if I was to take off this extra piece of sheet metal? $17. So I do need to leave that extra sheet metal on there, which means I'm going to have to find some way to lower the other side to match it. Or, yeah, the inner framing isn't much higher than that. It would only gain me about 3/4 of an inch if I went up a little higher with the cutoff. Okay, so that tells me what I need to know. So 19 and a half, figure that should leave me with plenty. Just for grins. Yeah, 19 and a half. Okay, then width-wise, if that's seated in that position, let's see if I can turn this so you can see this part. Okay, what I'm going to do is measure from the outside of the tank to the middle. Let's say 13 to be generous, so I need 26 wide. So I got more than enough space here for that. And on this side, I do have 21 inches. Okay. So there are a couple of ways I could deal with this. I could put this setup up in tight against the rear tires here. There is a benefit to that, and I think I might actually consider it. If I put enough steel in front of it, then I shouldn't have to worry too much about throwing a rock. A blown tire could still be a problem, so I do need to be careful with that. But the benefit to putting it up close back here is it potentially gives me the ability to remove the extra sheet metal over here and potentially raise my departure angle just a little bit. I'm not planning on going really far off-road with this rig, but I do want to take it on some dirt roads and potentially some areas that might have some gullies I have to get through. So it would be nice to keep my lower position as close to the rear tires as possible, thus making it less likely that I'm going to tag it on the end there. So, I guess the question is, what kind of steel do I have that I can put up in front of this? If I can get a 1/4 inch of sheet steel in front of this as a shield, I think that will work. I don't know if I've got a piece. Let me go see what I can find. It's been a few days waiting on some supplies, and here's what I got for the propane mount. We got this 2x2 piece of 3/16 plate. I'm going to use this as a shield behind the mud flap here. Mainly, I want to keep an eye on any kicked up rocks. I want to make sure that if any of these tires were to blow, that it should impact the shield and not impact the propane cylinder. So hopefully that'll be enough protection. It's going to be heavy, but that's fine. This bus should be able to handle the weight. I've got 2 6-foot pieces of 2x2 angle. This is also 3/16. Actually, yeah, I did order the thick stuff. 3/16 wall. This is 1x2 1/8 inch wall over here. So my plan is I'm going to create 2 front to back pieces using the 2-inch angle iron. One is going to mount up here on this piece. I should even be able to use some of the holes that are already in it from the AC components. So one of them is going to mount there lengthwise. One is going to mount here lengthwise. And then I'm going to use some extensions front to back, side to side. I'll show you what it looks like when I get there, to allow me to run long enough to clear the propane tanks. Then coming down this side is going to be the plate. It's going to get welded on to the angle iron up top. Then I'm going to have 2 verticals running down of 3-inch angle iron. Why? Because I had some left over. Then the 1x2 rectangular tube will go across down here, and the propane cylinders will sit on it. So let me get a few things squared away as far as dimensions are concerned, and I'll show you what I get. How's your skill on 3-dimensional visualization? So here's the beginning of it. This is the 2-inch angle iron. This is going to be the upper frame that'll be mounted onto the bus. So this is flipped upside down at the moment. I just have the propane cylinder sitting in here for size reference. So that's about where it's going to live. This piece is cut to 2 feet, and it's cut to that size because of the plate that's going to be welded to it. This one over here doesn't need to be anywhere near as long. All I need to do is make it wide enough to cover up the available space here. Yes, I certainly could miter these to make it look pretty. Honestly, I'm not so worried about it. I can weld all the way around these joints, make them solid. They're not going anywhere. So, I need to cut a 14-inch piece over here. That should clear me just fine for being able to set this in and get the initial tacks in place. Then the plan will be, I'm going to get this welded up and ready to go, flip it upside down and get it drilled and marked for where it's going to live. Then I've got some verticals I need to put in place, and we'll go from there. Here's our upper frame, welded together and ready to go. So the plan will be, this 2-foot long piece over here is going to line up with that one mounting rib up under the body. I'll show you where that one is. Then this extends further over than the next mounting rib. So the reason I did it this way, I didn't want to cut any extra sheet metal out of the body. I'll show you how this looks as I start to put it up in place, but basically the propane cylinders are going to be offset about 3 inches this direction in order to allow that mounting point to line up. That also provides a little bit of a safety margin between my plate shield and my propane cylinder. So that 2-foot piece that I showed you, get some light on the subject here, there we go, is going to line up here because this is U-channel or a U-style design. And I also have pre-made holes up in here that I can work with. So it's going to line up along here. The plate will mount right about there, welded onto the front of it. Then the other mounting point So we're going to come across. I'm not going to bother bolting into any of these. I'd have to use nut certs, or I could potentially mount nuts into the front up here. So you can see we have openings that I could potentially put a nut into. But really there's not a lot of stability there, and I don't think I'm going to need it. So over here is the next U-style channel. So the horizontals are going to come across and go a little bit further. They're actually going to go over to about here where they stop. So here I'm going to put a couple of washers in and bolt to this where the cross pieces intersect it. So I'll have 4 mounting bolts. Plan is, I think I'm going to use 3/8 grade 8 hardware to mount the upper frame in place. Then I'm going to use that 3-inch angle iron that I've got and mark out where my verticals need to be. So here, like I said, I didn't want to cut away any more of the sheet metal than already is, because obviously if I do that, I'm just going to have to replace it somewhere else. So it didn't make any sense to me to do that. We'll leave this alone, and I'm going to put a door in across the front here, filling in the remaining gap on that side. I also wanted to keep them relatively tucked in against the tire. Now again, just so I don't drag this on anything if I'm going over a rock or over a curb or who knows what. So keeping them tucked in a little bit and trying to keep them as high and tight as I possibly can. I'm also going to try to push this as far back as I can, if at all possible. I don't want it too close to the exhaust, but I'm hoping back here that exhaust pipe doesn't get terribly warm. I can always insulate it further if necessary. But we'll see how that part goes. So the verticals will come down in line with this piece of sheet metal here, so the propane tank will slide in and touch kind of right up against this, but further back. So I'll show you as I start to get this in place, and we'll get working. Here's the upper frame, just clamped up into position. So you'll see this side over here is longer. That's to make space for the plate that's going to hang down on the far side here to protect the tanks from the tires. And up here, there's the rest of our frame. So right there is the mounting point. Oh, looks like that clamp didn't catch. No problem. So right there will be bolts, one on each side, and then it extends back this far past it. This I'll be taking out. This is leftover plumbing from the air conditioning system. Just like there's one up front there as well, I do believe. So I'm not too worried about the way this interfaces, because normally I'd be worried about body mounts. But here you can see there's the body mount right there, or one of them. So basically this body is just attached with bolts and some thin pieces of rubber. So there shouldn't be hardly any flex between the frame and the body on this particular bus. We do have, if you can see it back there, a more normal body mount right there above my finger. So there are a few of those, but definitely they weren't anticipating a whole lot of frame flex on this. So I think we're going to be fine, but that said, I'm not mounting it to the frame in any way. So it's just going to be attached to these under ribs on the bus. So 2 bolts on this side, and I might try to put 3 bolts over here, 1 on each ear out here somewhere, and then 1 probably up in the center where that clamp is, just to make sure that I've got plenty of holding power on this side. So let me get some things drilled and we'll get this back down, get measuring for the verticals. Sorry about the lack of videoing. I got working and just kind of ran with it. So this is what I've got so far. So this will be the front, this portion up here that you see, mounting to a rib under the body here. These are the 3x3 verticals, basically using some leftover steel I already had. Down here on the bottom I've got 1x2 rectangular tube that I'm going to mount the plate on. Is this overkill for a couple of propane canisters? Yes, it absolutely is. I did it this way partially because I wanted to have some protection from the tires. Also, I wanted to have some protection just in case I happen to land on this. So this should be big enough to put 2 propane cylinders into, and hopefully I won't do any damage to it. That said, if I had this to do again, I had to work with the material I could get my hands on, which meant 6-foot lengths. Unfortunately, this is 3 feet long, or in some cases, I guess slightly longer than that. I know I had this at 90 degrees, yet somehow the numbers don't quite add up. Anyway, Down here, I would have preferred to have a little bit more coverage where this 1x2 and this angle iron come together. I've got it welded on both sides, top and bottom, and this section up here is going to have a steel plate sitting across the top of it that I'll weld around also. So it should be solid enough, but in the process of making it overkill, I would have preferred to have a little bit longer pieces down there and also a little bit more overlap with the angle iron. So if I had it to do again, I'd probably go but just buy a full stick of each instead of buying 6-foot lengths. The top should be fine. You can see I've got my mounting holes drilled in here. I've got 3 across the front. I think you can see 2 of the 3. And then down here, I've got a couple partway in. Let's see if I can see that. There's one, and there's the other. So hopefully this will work out. I've got all of the holes drilled in the body that this will mount to. So 5 bolts holding it in place, plus the weight of the propane. It should be fine. Let me get the plate on, get it welded in, and I'll show you what it looks like. There we stand. So we got the protection plate in where the tires are going to go. And on the bottom here, I drilled my 4 holes for the mounting system for the propane. So I'm just going to wipe this down, get some paint on it. I think I'm going to use bed liner, spray on. And then once I have this prepped and ready, then we'll get it lifted up into place and bolted on. And I'll show you what it looks like with propane in it. I know, I'm not the world's best welder. I also need to get my hands on an actual welder instead of this little buzz box for stuff this thick. There we go. When working solo, it's often necessary to figure out other ways to get heavier items up into position. I know this isn't the weight of a transmission, but a transmission jack works great for this kind of thing. Flat plate, low profile, easy to lift that up in there. Getting to the hardware up in here was a little bit of a pain, just because I welded this piece on a little bit high, just so it would sit in front of the mounting points. So I had to crawl underneath the bus down here and get those bolts up in place from above. Even though I did put the upper frame on and drill everything out, I also had to re-drill a couple of these front holes just because of the way everything's sitting in here. But we're just about there. So here's where we stand so far. You can see up in here, I've got the hardware mounted. It's still a little bit loose. I need to put the washer and lock washer in place. And then I've got this plumbing I need to get rid of. But it's sitting high enough it's not going to limit my ability to mount. So let's get some things bolted. Then I'm ready to put the propane mount onto the bottom here. I think we're done. I'm going to do a little bit of touch-up back here, just from having it sitting up on the gravel. I just need to do a little extra painting there to make sure everything's cleared. So I covered this all with bed liner, spray-on bed liner, except for this portion here. But here's where the propane's going to sit. There's the 1/4-inch plate shield to protect everything from the tires. Definitely solid, not going anywhere. And this is still, down here at the corner, sitting up higher than these pieces that were originally here. So I've actually gained a little bit of ground clearance going back through the back here. I'll show it to you there. I know you can't see it very well sitting up in there, but that's where we're going to sit. So I'm going to install a door across in front of the propane cylinders, and then I'll fill in the extra surrounding it with sheet metal. Let me show you what it looks like to put a tank in there. There we go, hopefully you can see that. Here's my reference tank. So the way this is set up, I do have to put the top in first. You slide it up in place, and there we are. Got our tie down here. There's plenty of room up in there. Obviously there will be another tank, and then here's our wing nut. There we go. So there we are. Propane tank in place. We got good solid protection all the way around it. This is solid, it's not going anywhere. And having that in that position gives me an easy access point for connecting my diverter valve, which will be probably attached right to the front of this, right in the middle here, if I had to guess. I'll see what works the most. But we'll put it up in there someplace. If I have long enough hoses on there, I could potentially mount it to the back of this. That's good and solid. But either way, we'll see how it goes. And again, right above this is where the incinerator toilet is going to live. So we should be good to go. And here we stand. If you'd like to see other videos about the bus build, there are quite a few on my channel. And they'll be continuing to come out. Hopefully the quality will start improving here soon, as I'm trying to pick up some new skills. But this is where we are. We back off a little bit so you can see it all. There's our point. So 2 propane cylinders, both grill type cylinders, making them easy to replace and cheap. Should give me plenty of propane. I'll see you over the next horizon.